Few figures have loomed as large over British politics in recent decades as Boris Johnson. The Conservative politician has played many roles, from Member of Parliament to London Mayor to Foreign Secretary and then Prime Minister. In 2016, he championed the controversial Brexit vote to leave the European Union. 3 years later, he moved into 10 Downing Street, and his Conservative Party won a landslide election with the largest majority since Margaret Thatcher. After 3 years in office, he lost the top job over several scandals. Now he's telling it all in his new book, Unleashed. Boris Johnson, pleasure to see you.
It's great to see you. Thank you for having me on the show.
You came of age politically as a Thatcherite Tory. I remember you when you were a journalist and we would talk, you were very much a Thatcherite. I look at what certainly the Republican Party has become under Trump. It's essentially protectionist, nationalist. Yeah. Trump wants to spend more, on all kinds of entitlements. He wants to give people tax-free overtime and tips, and yet you support him. I don't understand that. The Republican Party under Trump sort of essentially believes in the opposite of everything Margaret Thatcher did. So how could you, as a Thatcherite, support Trump?
Well, I mean, let's hang on. But wait, Farid, you're brilliant, inquisitive. I do not wish to get trapped into this very important election that's taking place just a couple of days
from
when
we said you support Trump. I'm asking you why.
What I would say about the question is, how can someone like me, who's a free marketeer and a free trader and a Thatcherite in my instincts, have done some of the things that we did that I explained, and yes, I do oppose tariffs, and I do think that if I look at the UK right now, I'll say nothing about the US. If I look at the UK, I think the state is too big. Yes, I do. And I think that we need to be cutting taxes. I think it's insane that the Labour government has just put up taxes by £40 billion. I don't know what they think they're doing. There's no need to do this. Government is astronomically big now in the UK, and we do need to be going in the other direction. Now, you talk about the US.
Nothing like that. You were a big spender when you were Prime Minister.
Hang on. We
did have COVID.
We did have COVID. Come on, mate. I had to spend about £410 billion on COVID, and it was very difficult to.
Even outside of that, you were a big spender. As you know.
Well, I believe
your
in
leveling up agenda. I believe in costs money.
You do need to spend on infrastructure, but the advantage of doing that is that you trigger private sector investment. What I wanted to do, and which we did very successfully in London, was to chuck a sprat to catch a minnow. And you look at London, it's the opposite of most of the rest of the UK. It's the private sector, the public sector is about 25% of the economy. The rest is private investment, and that's what you need. Now, here in the US, I gather that Elon Musk is going to come in and cut $2 trillion off government spending. I mean, so if that's the agenda, then I think that needs to be looked at seriously, because I do think there is a case that Western democracies, like the UK, perhaps like the US as well, the state has got too big.
Let me go to Brexit, because Goldman Sachs says UK economy grew 5% less over 8 years than other countries, and it says it's significantly underperformed because of reduced trade from the European Union, weaker business investment, and lower immigration from the European Union.
Lower immigration.
More importantly, 63% of your countrymen now believe Brexit has been more of a failure than success. Surely that is that. I mean, 63% don't agree on anything nowadays. No. So surely that's a pretty resounding argument against Brexit.
No, I don't agree at all. You've got to imagine that the British public is seriously going to want to go back into the European Union. To do that, they would have to vote to spend an extra £20 billion a year, send it to be spent at the discretion of the European Union, give up control of their legal system.
But they seem to be willing to do it.
No, then, well, I bet they would never do it. It's never going to happen. And I think it was the right thing to do, to come out of the people in America. America guards its sovereignty American independence, American freedom more zealously than any other country in the world.
We're a vast continental nation. You're without being part of Europe, you're a small country, a middle-sized power.
And as for Goldman Sachs's statistics, I just remind you that since the vote to leave the EU in 2016, we've grown faster than Germany, we've grown faster than Italy, we've grown faster
slower than the Netherlands, slower than Switzerland.
So last time I looked,
again, you're in the middle of the pack.
Last time I looked, I know, but last time I looked, France, Germany, Italy, these were all members of the European Union, right? So what we need to do, and what my government would have done had I been spared by my team, by the Tory guys, what we need to do is take proper advantage of Brexit.
Next on GPS, I'll ask Boris Johnson about his passionate support for Ukraine and whether a potential second Trump presidency would help or hurt that country's war effort. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been one of the most ardent supporters of Ukraine's war effort. Reflecting on one of his visits after the invasion, Johnson quipped that I thought I was definitely more popular in Kyiv than in some parts of Kensington. It's all detailed in his new memoir, Unleashed. So I know that you have been incredibly strong in terms of your support for Ukraine, as Prime Minister, after being Prime Minister. You must worry that a Trump victory would mean that the United States would be less zealous in its support for Ukraine.
I do worry a great deal about what will happen in Ukraine, and I think it's the single most important issue that we face in our generation, in the early part of the 21st century. This is the deciding conflict, in my view. It will set the pattern for what happens for decades to come. If the tyranny, if Putin wins, it will have terrible, terrible repercussions for the world, and not just in the Euro-Atlantic area, but in the area, but in the South China Sea and elsewhere. So it's got to go right. Now, how is the US election going to affect that? And I know that you and I have discussed all this many times. Before we go on to President Trump, just continuing with the current policy that Joe Biden and our government have been following is not enough, right?
But you want more.
So even if Kamala wins, that's not that with the current trajectory, that is not enough. I'm afraid the Russians have been gaining territory in the last couple of days. We all know what's going on. The Ukrainians have done astonishing things. They've taken this huge segment in Kursk and so on. But unless they get the permissions to use the ATACMS systems, the Storm Shadows, unless they get the proper financial support, and unless they get a long-term solution to their security needs, then we're not going to fix it for them.
But that enhanced support is even more unlikely under a President Trump.
Well, so that's where that's clearly that's a lot of people worry about that, and a lot of people say that. But I got to speak as I found, and when I was Foreign Secretary, when I had to deal with Donald Trump, I've got to tell you, Fareed, that on a lot of the key issues, he was very, very solid. So when it came to Iran, when it came to Syria, and indeed when it came to Russia, to Putin and Ukraine, he gave the Ukrainians those shoulder-launched anti-tank weapons when, frankly, the previous Democrat administration, when you look at how they responded to Putin's invasion in 2014, they did virtually nothing. So I hear what people say, and to say I'm not anxious, would be clearly wrong. I'm very, very concerned. But I believe, on the basis of what Donald Trump has done in the past, that he will be robust. I really do. And just on this, for this instinctive reason, that I cannot believe that a guy who is so passionate about his country, about making America great again, which he wants to do, and is so convincing about that, will want to kick off his next presidential term by basically allowing the Soviet Empire to be great again. I can't believe that he will allow that to happen.
Would you advise Trump to extend NATO membership to Ukraine?
I think it's the only solution, and it has to be done, because why is Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, it's like all the Baltic states and Finland now, why are they all members of NATO? Because Russia has invaded them in the last 100 years. And that has now happened to Ukraine. Now, Putin has not succeeded. He will never subjugate Ukraine, right? Those people are going to fight for their freedom. The only long-term solution is to give everybody the clarity that comes with NATO membership. And that clarity means peace and stability.
I got to ask you finally, you read in the book that maybe this being Prime Minister should be the last job you hold in British politics, but
yes.
you say politics is addictive. Does that mean that you are still addicted to politics and that we could expect to see Boris Johnson back in the arena?
The answer, Ferry, is of course contained in the pages of Unleashed. But I think that I was useful in 2019 because we couldn't get Brexit done. I can't see at the moment how I can really do anything similar. But I want to be. Of course, I want to be supportive of my party, and of course I'm going to do that. But I want to stress that the purpose of writing Unleashed was to explain what Brexit Britain was all about, to explain levelling up, and if other people are going to drive that agenda forward, then of course no one will be more delighted. And I'm living a life of blameless. When I'm not appearing on your show, I'm living a life of blameless, rustic obscurity in Oxfordshire, writing and painting and doing God knows what. So
Boris Johnson,
I'm very happy.
Pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Lovely to see you. Thank you.
Next on GPS, how does China view the US election? Would Xi Jinping rather deal with Kamala Harris or Donald Trump?